to another episode of the Hot Topic Podcast with your host, Patrick Clounch.
Hey crew, and welcome to another episode of the Hot Topic Podcast. Today my guest is a longtime veteran of the industry. He is founder of the Heavy Duty Consulting Firm and host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jamie Irvine. Jamie, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Man, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast with us, man. I know some conversations that you and I have had. I think you bring a lot of light into the industry, especially into fixed ops where, you know, let's face it, it's not really the face of the industry, but I think a lot of people would be somewhat shocked to know your day to day. So, I'm looking forward to this, brother.
Yeah, me too. Always happy to see people entering into the podcasting space and, you know, creating something. It's an awesome experience when you get to create something from nothing and bring it into reality, and then it serves people in our great industry. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah. I've enjoyed it, man. This is my 6th or 7th podcast. We started back in May, really. I kind of got it ramped up in April and had my first guest in May. Not having any sort of experience to doing this at all, I just felt like, you know what, just jump in.
Yeah.
The best way to figure out how to swim is just jump in and you'll figure it out. So,
or you'll sink like a rock.
Yeah, that's right. One or the other. Yeah, for sure, man. So tell us a little about you. I know you've got your consulting firm that's doing really well. You've got your podcast that you've been doing for a number of years. Tell us a little bit about you.
So yeah, right now that's what I'm doing. I've been working in the heavy duty industry since 1998. Started off in manufacturing. Worked for a manufacturer for like 10 years, and that was a great introduction to this amazing industry. And I got the benefit of working with some pretty awesome mentors, some people who had some real experience in the business, and they taught me a lot of fundamentals that I've used the rest of my career. I think that manufacturing beginning of my career has kind of weaved its way through my whole journey, right up into, till today, really. After being in the manufacturing space, I went into distribution. I started my own mobile repair business, got back into distribution. And, when I was working in distribution, because of my manufacturing roots, I was always working very closely with our suppliers. And that's where the whole concept of the heavy duty parts report came from, is that I was out doing field work with a supplier and we were having great technical conversations. And I thought to myself, the independent service channel doesn't have as many resources as the folks that work on the dealership and the OEM side. If we could make these conversations available to the industry, that might be beneficial to them. And so I did a little bit of market research and I kind of got a resounding yes, we would appreciate that. And so I started the show in 2019, and very quickly I started having guests of the show reach out to me afterwards and say, hey, you know a lot about the parts business. Could you help us with this or that? And so, I didn't really want another job. I had already built a company, exited. I was back as an employee, was really wanting to scratch that entrepreneurial itch again. And so I kind of turned down my first big opportunity to take a position with another company. And he came back to me, the CEO of that company, and said, well, why don't you start a consulting business? I'll be your first client. So January 1st, 2020, I started the heavy duty consulting work that I do now. It eventually became the Heavy Duty Consulting Corporation. But if you remember back 2020, that was an interesting year.
Yes, it was.
So I get started. I quit my job in December of 2019. I start my consulting in 2020. The first 9 weeks went great. And then the whole world shut down. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I've made a terrible mistake. But, after the first round of lockdowns, in June of 2020, we got another client, and then another and another, and kind of just been doing that ever since. So it's been a great journey, and I spend my time working with manufacturers, distribution companies, service repair, and fleets to try to help them with their businesses. We spend a lot of time focused on growth, but we also work on people and organization and operations and systems. And it's just been a great journey. And we've been publishing the Heavy Duty Parts Report pretty much continuously, with the exception of a 7-month break where I just needed a break. But we're up to episode 353, which will 352 will drop soon. 353 is already in the bank, recorded and ready to go.
Wow. Very impressive, my friend. 353 episodes. Man, that is awesome. Very
well,
cool.
I'll tell you though, that's not really the actual count for my total podcast career. So what a lot of people don't know is that prior to starting the Heavy Duty Parts Report, I did 150 episodes in a podcast called Build a Better Business. And it was very generic. It was very kind of wide open, and it never got a lot of traction. But I did learn how to podcast. And you talk about just getting started and jumping in. I knew nothing about audio engineering, video production, lighting, distribution, content marketing. I knew a bit about content marketing, but not for podcasts. And, I learned a lot. And I made a commitment when I started that first show. I said, I'm going to do 100 episodes no matter what. And where that came from was looking at the stats around pod fade and how people often get started. They're very excited. They find out it's a lot more work than they realize, and it's going to take a lot longer to get where they want to go than they thought. And so they quit pretty early. At that time, it was 6 months or 12 episodes, whatever came first. So I thought, well, I'm going to set a big, audacious goal, 100 episodes no matter what. I ended up doing 150 before I realized my mistake of being very broad. And so then I kind of shifted my mindset. It was John Lee Dumas, who's a very successful podcaster with Entrepreneurs on Fire, who says, niche down till it hurts, and the riches are in the niches. And I thought to myself, well, what niche do I know the most about? It was like heavy duty parts in the trucking industry. And I thought that's a pretty good niche to go down. And I remember typing it into my pod player, my search bar, heavy duty parts, and nothing came up. There was a bunch of trucking shows, but nothing came up for heavy duty parts. It was one of those palm to head moments, like, oh my goodness, I've been doing this other podcast for 150 episodes, totally missing the great opportunity that was there for me. So that's kind of the winding, twisting road that led me to today.
Wow. So over 500 total podcast episodes. That's even more impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, when I started going down this path as well, you start learning more about niche down. And much like you, I start looking at, well, what do I know? And you have that. I don't know if you had that, but I had this moment of nobody's going to care. If I niche down that far, nobody's going to care. But everything you read, everything you see, other podcasts, they tell you keep niching down, almost to, like you said, to the point of where it hurts. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to get past that because, for obvious reasons, we want to include everybody, right? Oh, let's just include everybody. But you quickly figure out, by the time you include everybody you think is going to pay attention, it's only a small percentage that's really paying attention, and that's who you need to speak with. So yeah, that's good. And not to give advice, because I haven't been doing this as long as you, obviously, but anybody that's starting a podcast and you're wanting to get into this, don't be afraid to niche down. I feel like I need to niche down just a little bit more. I'm down there pretty well, but my market will tell me, obviously, some research that I'm doing. And, I've created a networking group on LinkedIn and getting a lot of feedback there. But yeah, don't be afraid to niche down for sure.
Yeah. And, if you listen to me speak long enough, you'll detect that I'm Canadian. And there's a wonderful entrepreneur. Her name is Arlene Dickinson, and she was on Dragon's Den years ago. But she talks a lot about when you start something new, you'll get a lot of pushback, family and friends. And she said, what you need to do is you need to keep going when people start saying to you, why are you doing that when you start out? You need to keep going until they say, how did you do that? And I really, really like that, because when I started my podcasting journey, I will tell you, I had family who just ridiculed and mocked me. I've had people mock me even in the last 6 weeks. And I'm not the greatest podcaster ever, and I've not certainly produced the greatest results ever, but I've done quite well in that space. And yet I'm still getting ridicule about it. And it comes from people who don't understand the medium. They don't understand the opportunity. And also sometimes, and I'm not speaking directly to any one person, but I think sometimes it comes from people who want to do what you're doing, but for one reason or another can't. They might not have the circumstance. They might not have the determination and the discipline. They just might not have the ability. And maybe there's a little bit of jealousy in there. But that was quite discouraging. I remember one family member, over and over and over again, every time I saw them, you making any money doing that yet? You making any money doing that yet? And for a very long time, the answer was no, I wasn't. And so I kept going and I kept going. And then, I remember when I made my first multi-six-figure deal, you know who the first person I called was? I said, hey, by the way, I made some money. I didn't tell them how much, but
Good for you.
But that is where I think even I was guilty of this. I looked at people who had gone before me who was very successful at it, and I wanted that success, but I didn't comprehend what it takes to get there. And once I got into it, I realized, oh my goodness, like this is fun a little bit of the time, and it's just a lot of hard work the rest of the time. And I think with most things in, whether it's your personal goals, around health and physical fitness, or it's your business goals, or it's goals with your family, like it's mostly just work. It's mostly just grind. And, it's not just work without a purpose. You have to have that strong why, and you have to be smart with your strategy to be successful. But at the same time, it's not what most people think it is.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point, as we age, as we become more veteran, should I say, you tend to include fewer and fewer people in with your ideas.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean by that. I'm talking to the next generation, the people that want to do whatever it is you want to do, whether it's a podcast, a newsletter, whatever. Don't tell anybody your dreams. Keep them to yourself. Because if you talk to 100 people, family included, 99 people are either going to smile at you and tell you something that you want to hear that may not be the truth, or they're going to talk about you behind your back or to your face. They're going to ridicule you. They're going to give you every reason for you to mentally quit. Don't do it. That one person out of 100 will stand behind you. Maybe they've done it. Maybe they want to see you achieve your goals. But you don't know who that one person is until you get going. So the best thing to do, for me anyway, was quit telling people your goals, because you never get the response that you expected. It's you. For me, I would have a grand idea of what I thought. Oh my gosh, the industry needs this. And I would tell people about it, and you would get that lukewarm response. Well, it's not because they don't support you per se. It's because they don't understand. They don't understand what you're thinking, what you're going through, what you see, your vision. Like I said, most people won't see your vision, nor will they understand it until you achieve it. And like you said, then they ask, wow, how'd you do it? How'd you get there? And what they don't see, to your point again, is all the sleepless nights of trying to figure it out. Am I doing the right thing? Am I an idiot for doing this? But then maybe it's an email or a message or a LinkedIn DM that says, man, you're doing good. You're doing a really good job for our industry, or whatever it is. And those are the things that kind of keep you going. It's like, okay, maybe I am doing the right thing. So, yeah.
That really resonates with me. And the other thing that I think is really important is the people who have been the most supportive of me have been the ones who perhaps have already been there. They've gone ahead of me. They've done it. And they just are so happy that you're going to join the ranks and they want to help you in any way. So I've done that. Every single time I see a new podcaster, I reach out to them. Or if they reach out to me, I respond immediately and I set up a meeting and I give them some of my time. I give them maybe more unsolicited advice than they even were expecting, but I try to do a brain dump and give them everything I've learned in almost 10 years now of doing this. I try to give that to them. I just give it away for free because I want them to succeed, because I know how hard it is. And it's interesting because you would think that we would be the people who would be the most kind of closed off about that because we'd be worried about competition. And yet we're the ones who actually want to help you. And so if you're in that position, don't go talk to somebody who doesn't know anything about this. Go find someone who's already gone ahead of you. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, every one of us. And it's just been my experience that the bigger and more successful the person is, the more likely they are to want to help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You reached out to me. I didn't, much like to your point, when you first start doing something, even though I've got a ton of experience and I have a lot of confidence in who I am and what I've done and what I've accomplished, when you step off into a new frontier, sometimes you have that doubt. And it takes someone like you, for me, to step in and say, without saying it, hey, man, let me help you. I knew immediately once you sent me that message, I went and told my wife. I said, you're not going to believe this. I got this guy, he's Canadian. And I start telling her the story. Again, I get that glassed over look like she doesn't understand. She's an educator. I understand, she doesn't get it. But I was so excited to be able to tell somebody that, hey, somebody that's done this is reached out to me and they want to help. You didn't say those words, but I felt it, man, and I truly appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I want to touch on. You talked about moving ahead despite having doubt. And it is difficult sometimes to do that because you don't actually know. Not everything I've done has worked out. I've had a lot of failures on this journey. And I've never been afraid to swing for the fences. I've never been afraid to shake things up and change things up if it's needed, right? And I try hard not to do that, just, change for the sake of change. But sometimes deep down in your gut, you just know that this direction is the right way to go. And you can't necessarily articulate all the reasons why. You've got some information, but there's just something else there that's kind of pushing you. And a lot of people, they shy away from that because they're worried, well, what if it doesn't work out, right? And I've been worried about that. Well, because I've had a couple kind of public failures. And what I've been really pleasantly surprised is because I've put my best foot forward to, and I'm not perfect, I've made mistakes, but I put my best foot forward, I try my hardest, and I'm really trying to give back to our industry. People have been very forgiving. People have been very supportive. People have said, hey, man, you had the courage to try. That's better than a lot of people, better than me even. So how can I help you? And so I just think that you have to listen to your instincts. You have to, and sometimes you have to move forward with zero evidence, or sometimes even what would appear to be evidence to the contrary that say maybe you shouldn't do it, but in your gut, if you push through to the other side, this is the right thing to do. You've got to listen to that. And there's something going on there that's bigger than just you and I. And I think a lot of people do themselves a great disservice by not listening to that, and in some ways tapping into something that's unique about them, bringing that forward to the world. That's important, right? We need more people to do that.
Yeah. I years ago, I have adult children, so they're in their 30s, and when they were in their formidable years, and I have always had that entrepreneurial spirit about me, even though I've held positions with other companies, there was always something burning there. I didn't know what it was, but it's just part of who I am. I would tell my kids all the time, I would much rather fail at everything I tried when I'm laying there on my deathbed than have the regret of never trying. I'd much rather have that And I told my kids, I said, if I'm lucky to live long enough and I'm surrounded by my family at my bedside, which is what everybody dreams to have, right? I want to sit there and laugh and go, do you remember when I tried this and how dumb that was and how it didn't work? But I took a piece of that and put it to something else. It's putting that puzzle together. It's everything that I've done in my professional career. I've taken a little piece of it and said, you know what? I liked that. Let me put that here. I think it'll work here. Even today, some of the things that I've done 20, 25, 30 years ago, I'm pulling pieces and putting into what I'm doing today because honestly, I feel like it works. So yeah, I think you and I can both agree. Don't be afraid to jump. Just get out there. Just do it. Follow your gut. Forget about what other people say or think about you because 99% of the time it's inaccurate anyway. So what difference is it? So yeah. Great stuff, man.
And that being said, I mean, we're not advocating that you foolishly throw caution to the wind and put yourself into a situation where you're going to be economically devastated. Like every business I've started, the ones that succeeded and the ones that failed, I always started the same way. I started very small. I maintained another revenue stream while getting it off the ground. I secured a foundation before I fully jumped. But what I did do is when I had the idea and I felt it was the right thing to do, I started taking action. And that's what we're talking about. Start taking action, start moving in that direction, piece by piece, put it together. And, it is important to maintain your foundation. I tell my daughter, I have an adult daughter as well, and I tell her, like, if you have an income stream and you have a home, you have the foundation for everything else. And that and that is what is important. So it's just don't go throw caution to the wind. That's not what we're saying, but we are saying listen to your instincts and put in the work and move forward.
For sure. Yeah, there is consequences for everything. You want to your point, limit those consequences. So I follow a guy, Dave Portnoy, who started, he does a One Bite Pizza review. That's how I knew him. But he started a media firm before that. And in listening to his story, by the time I got to him here recently, he had already successfully sold a multi-million-dollar media firm, right? So he started Barstool Sports. And he, in his gut, knew that it was going to work. But in listening to his story, how he and his wife had to move into her parents' basement, a one-bedroom basement, to be able to give him time to be able to get this thing going. It took him, and don't quote me on this, but I think it took him 7 or 8 years before they started seeing any real money. And there was a lot of heartache. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of stress, but he stayed diligent through it. To the point to where he sold it off, like I said, for multi-millions of dollars. Now, for those of you that are watching and listening, those are rare instances. It doesn't work like that all the time. If you feel so compelled that you're going to chase down a path and you're willing to live on the street, basically, just know that there's going to be consequences that come with that, for sure. Yeah.
And I think that unfortunately, that's going back to what I said earlier. People look at the end result and they say, I want that. And it's like, really? Do you? Because do you even know what it takes to get that result? Right. So you want to sell a company for millions of dollars. Do you understand the sacrifices you're going to have to make? Do you understand the things you're going to miss with your family? Do you understand how you have to be one-dimensional for a decade to get that? And on the other side of that coin, I think it was Bill Gates who said that people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in 10. And so, it's this balance of, like, you have to figure out what you actually want, what you're aiming at, and then you have to understand what it takes to get it. And then you have to make a decision. Do I still want it? I'll give you an interesting statistic from my consulting work.
Yeah, please.
We do strategic business planning.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we're introducing independently owned small mom and pop businesses who have scaled to a certain point, but they're looking to go to that next level. Basically, they're looking to transition to a professionally managed company.
Hmm.
And about 20% of our clients quit the whole thing when they are going through that strategic business planning process. Some of them have even sold their businesses and shut them down.
Wow.
Most of them, when I say quit, I mean they go, oh my God, the thing I'm aiming at, I don't want. And they completely about face and go in a different direction. And I think that's a roaring success because we just save them heartache and possibly financial ruin by getting them to understand what it's going to take. You know, it's easy to come up with a dream. It's difficult to execute. And when they understood what it was going to take to execute, they said, you know, we talked about it and this isn't actually what we want. And that was a wonderful outcome, right? The other 80% go, no, this is what I want. And now they know what it's going to take. And then they double down and they go do it. So it's an interesting outcome. But yeah, about 20% of our clients who go through that, they get about halfway through and they go, nope, change of direction.
And that 20% you're talking about, those are business owners that have a thriving, successful business. They've established themselves, and to be able to not want to take that next step, which I don't blame them. It could be at a certain level in their life. Do they, it sounds like you're bringing to light what it's really going to take, and you're having a heart to heart with them. It's like, okay, we can go down this path. However, I just want you to know this is what it's going to take. And I think that's amazing. 20% of those people are like, yeah, this is not at all what we were thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's easy to say, well, I want to scale and I want to have 6 stores. Okay. How much capital expenditures are going to be required? What's the market share that you're, and what's the cost of acquiring the market share necessary to support that? What is the potential debt that you're going to have to incur in order to maintain minimum viability while you scale? Like, those are hard questions that we ask, and we get them to go through that process of figuring it out. And that's what I mean about when you have a dream and you want to go do something and your gut's pushing you that direction. That's great. You should definitely pursue that, but don't just throw caution to the wind. Do the research, take the time to learn and understand what the implications of that, of following that dream and trying to execute on that idea is actually going to cost you. And once you understand that, you may realize, I want to do something different, or it may validate that, yeah, it's worth it. If I have to go move in with mom and dad for a few years, I'm going to do it because it's worth it.
Yeah. And how disheartening would it be? Let's take, for example, you're working with a client. They're running a multi-million-dollar business, and they would have to partly consider selling off their whole lifestyle to be able to take the next step. That's essentially what happens, and that's what a lot of people don't see. It's like at my stage of my life, it's like I kind of like where I'm at. I'm not sure that I'm willing to mortgage all that, literally, to be able to take another giant leap. Now, maybe 20, 25, 30 years ago when I was younger, yeah, for sure, because you don't know what you don't know, right? But when you get to that point, it's like, man, I kind of like where I live. I like my 2 dogs. I like my wife. I like my kids, but you're willing to walk away from all that. That's a tough pill to swallow, for sure.
Or even just put it all at risk, right? Because a lot of times you're going to take on debt, you're going to incur additional expenses, you're going to dramatically reduce the safety net you've built up. And sometimes what happens, like even with me, so coming to the end of 2024, we were doing our strategic business planning for 25, and that's when we took the 7-month break because our daughter had moved out. All of a sudden now we're empty nesters. We're looking, my wife and I are looking at each other saying like, okay, do we even want to be together going forward? Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, we've got some things to work on and figure out. Our daughter's no longer here, so that's not a focus. Like, what do we want to do with our time? And we've been building businesses for 15 years. We hadn't taken a proper holiday, and I had also abandoned a passion of mine around motorcycles for over 18 years, which I never intended to do. When I sold my motorcycles, when I got married, I thought maximum 5 years and I'll get another one, and 18 years go by. But there's other priorities, right? Buying a house, raising a family, and starting and trying to sell businesses and scale them, and motorcycles just didn't rank high enough on the list. And I said to my wife, I said, I don't want to do this anymore the way we're doing it, and so we took a break and we kind of restructured everything after 7 months, and now we're continuing on, but we have a completely different cost structure. And I own a 1966 Triumph that I'm building from the frame up, and I've got a 2009 Road King that I bought that I ride on the daily, and I launched a YouTube channel called Wrench and Ride Customs with a friend. And like, I'm spending a large amount of my time on one of the things that I really love and that I didn't have time for. And at this point in life, it's just like, if I don't do this now, I probably never will. And so that really changed. So even my own business was dramatically affected by strategic business planning. And we made big changes to the whole model of our business in order to accommodate a lifestyle. Now my wife and I have a very specific goal, right? We have a certain amount of days we want to work. We have a retirement goal and a date in mind. And we also are going to really enjoy this next season, the fall of our lives, right? If you think of your life in 4 seasons, right? Spring, summer, fall, and winter. Well, we're in the fall of our lives, and we're going to enjoy it in a very specific way. And that's all very intentional now. And I think that sometimes people, they have great ideas, but they don't back it with that intention, and they don't kind of think through all the elements and make sure they get what they want. And that's the danger of just chasing your dream without doing the work that we were talking about.
Yeah. And I think this brings us to a really good point. I'm just sitting there listening to you. You could be talking to someone that's wanting to not necessarily walk away from a business, but maybe they're wanting to make a career change. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've just reached the empty nest stage where now they have some different opportunities that they didn't have a year ago. What was that 7 months like? What led up to it? If you can maybe share that with us.
So we hit our high point in 2023. We had signed a very large sponsorship deal for our podcast. We had hired a lot of employees. Our consulting business was growing, so I had brought on some senior consultants. And then in 2024, the freight recession in the U.S. was kind of constricting budgets. And so marketing budgets were shrinking. A lot of times when companies are needing to cut costs, they cut external help first, not the internal, because they want to preserve people's jobs. And so we were starting to see a decline. But, honestly, we ended 2024 still at the highest financial level the company had ever performed in a calendar year. So it wasn't like we were, cratering or anything like that. But the stress of it was taking all the fun out of doing it. And I have a personal mission in this, right? So I believe that the trucking industry is the backbone of society. And without it, people's lives and our way of life hang in the balance. And so I'm going to do everything I can to support the industry because it is so essential. And I was getting to the point where I just didn't even want to do that anymore. And that was an alarm bell for me, a big one. And then personally, things were going on in my life. Like I said, the transition to empty nest, and there was just a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I'm just not enjoying anything I'm doing right now. And I need to make a change. So that 7 months, I went to work for a company that I had, they had brought me in as a keynote speaker in the past, and we had talked about doing some training under contract as a consultant. And they just said, well, it'd be easier if you just joined us, Jamie. And I thought, man, maybe that's what I want to do. But, I had people that I had to take care of, and I had an opportunity with all my people, the people who supported me and had done a really great job for me. One of my senior consultants in the the US. We were able to help him transition to where his consulting business was front facing to the market, and we were able to transition some of our clients to him. The editor, we were able to help him get started with his own media production company, and he got signed by Discovery Channel, I believe it is, or Outdoor Life. He's editing a TV show now anyway. So I was able to take care of my people to the best of my ability. And then, I went to work for that company as the national sales director. And if it wasn't for the kind of devastating effect of a few things in Canada right now that are really hurting our economy, I probably would still be working with them. And we had started another show, and I'd probably still be there. But after 7 months, they had to restructure, and the way it turned out over the last couple of months, I believe they've had to let go a number of people. So it was challenging times for them, and I totally understood their decision. I even told the president when he let me know what was going to happen. I said, I've been there. I've been on your side of the table. I totally get it. It makes sense to me. So there's no hard feelings. Like a great company, great group of people. But that 7 months where I was able to not have to worry about the legal department, the financial department, I didn't have to own the whole thing, run the whole thing, be responsible for the whole thing. I could just do my job. It just gave me a complete reset where I was able to focus on personal stuff, get some personal things kind of in order, get my own house in order, recharge the batteries. And when they let me know at the end of July, the industry just totally rallied to my support and to help. And I had sponsors come out of the woodwork and be like, we were so sad when the show was, ended, bring it back. And I had clients phone me and say, we've got projects, come work right now. Right. And so it was a great experience for me. And it was a testament to the hard work I'd put in for years, giving to the industry and the reputation I built up. Right. And so that all worked out very well for me, and I'm very happy. But what I didn't do is I didn't bring the business back or the podcast back in the same structure that I had before. I restructured it in a way to support the goals that I have on a personal level. And now we have a far reduced cost structure, so it's easier to make money, make profit, and it's fun again. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm loving it again, and that is really important to me because tough times are ahead. There's always tough times ahead. It's never just smooth sailing, as it were. And so I need to make sure that my reserves, my batteries are charged up, right? My reserves are there. So when we go through the next tough time, I've got bandwidth to be able to carry me through that and stick to my mission and stay on point and make sure I'm making good choices. So I know it's a long answer, but that's the story.